I'm really excited to be kicking off this series here on solving the biggest challenges facing San Francisco. So today, we're going to be talking about a big issue, and that is homelessness. We're going to be kicking off a big effort that we're going to be going deep on here. And, you know, homelessness is really an issue that touches everybody here in San Francisco and in the Bay Area, right? It's hard to feel like things are okay when, you know, you're seeing the suffering of men and women on the streets. And so, you know, thank you so much, you know, to all of you for coming here today and for really saying, you know, we've got to do something about this. So, you know, if we're going to make an impact, you know, we need to start by really, you know, understanding the issues on the ground, and we got to start by listening. And so today we have two really great speakers, Seymour and Tom Wolf, who are both formerly homeless and are now activists advocating for the homeless. And so, guys, thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So I'd love to start by, you know, just hearing a bit about your stories, and you know, maybe you can walk us through your story and what it is that you're doing today. And Del, maybe we can start with you.
Okay, my name is Seymour. Very glad to be here tonight to maybe give some knowledge on what is really going on. Both of us speak from the heart, and we speak with passion and knowledge, but you really need all these things to speak on it. A lot of times in the media, we have people that don't have any of those components that speak on it, and you all really don't get the real knowledge of what's going on. I'm a former Vietnam vet, a former firefighter paramedic from Los Angeles City, lived a pretty clean and safe life until I was in my 40s. And I became a dope fiend in my 40s. Never smoked a cigarette up to that date, the date I put that pipe in my mouth. To tell a long story, make it as short as possible, I arrived in the Tenderloin. I think we all know where the Tenderloin is or been there. I arrived in the Tenderloin one night not having any idea what the Tenderloin was, never even heard that word before. And I just thought I was in the exciting part of San Francisco. I parked the car and got out, and being recently from LA, they shoot movies all day and all night in LA. Any street you go on, they're shooting a movie. That's just common. So I figured they were shooting a movie, because don't nobody look like this. People don't dress like this, and people don't walk around with needles in their arms, and I'm looking for the cameras. Never found the cameras, but I found that pipe that night. And I went from driving on the freeway to living under the freeway in 30 days. Car gone, every money gone, everything's gone. And I lived that stupid, crazy life for 18 years. Going to jail, being shot, being stabbed, going through the worst part of my life. Lost my family, lost everything, and just became a straight-up, full-blown dope fiend. I was telling someone the other day, I didn't look in the mirror for 11 years. I was afraid to. Didn't want to see what I knew I was going to see. I was so unrecognizable. I had ran away from home, from my wife and family. And one night in the Tenderloin, my wife was a nurse, and she had late shifts. One night in the Tenderloin, I'm walking across the crosswalk, pushing my shopping cart, had pissed on myself, and got stains all the way there in layers on my clothes. Wearing an old Army field jacket that I hadn't changed in. I hadn't taken a bath for months. And I'm walking around pushing my shopping cart, and I'm at the front bumper of this car, and Tom's right about as far away as my wife was, and I looked her in the eye, and I said, oh my God. My wife is seeing me at the worst in my life. Oh my God. And it just completely blew me away that I had let her see me like this. And I put my head down and just walked and bawled and cried the rest of the night that my wife had seen me in my worst. So to end this quick story, when I finally went back home and we were sitting there one day, and I said, baby, I just got to ask you, what did you think when you saw me? She said, fool, I ain't seen you since you left this house. She didn't recognize. The woman I slept with, the woman I've had babies by, didn't recognize me from 4 feet away. And that's when I knew I was really in bad shape. I'm sorry, let me go.
No, it's beautiful. It's a great story.
Mm-hmm.
So good evening, everybody. My name's Tom Wolf. I'm a recovery advocate in San Francisco now, but I'm also in recovery from addiction, and I'm formerly homeless. My story has some similar traits to Dell's, but it wasn't as long. My journey went a lot faster. So I'm basically a middle-class regular guy, married with 2 kids. I was a homeowner in Daly City. I worked for the city and county of San Francisco as a child support officer. Had a pretty normal life, too. In early 2015, I had surgery on my foot. And after surgery, they had to stick 2 pins in my 2 titanium screws in my foot. And they sent me home with a 30-day supply of 10 milligram oxycodone tablets from the hospital. And I didn't use those pills as directed.
Yeah.
Okay. I got addicted to those pills. I spent the next year and a half purchasing pills off the street. It's kind of funny because I tried to get my refill from my doctor after like 7 or 8 days of a 30-day supply, and they were just like, what's wrong? Are you okay? And so of course I couldn't get a refill. So I actually looked it up on YouTube. Where can I buy pills on the street in San Francisco? And there were several different references to Pill Hill, which is Golden Gate and Leavenworth in San Francisco. Drove down there, boot and all on my foot, got out, and there was 5 or 6 people down there selling Roxys, which are 30 milligram oxycodone, OP80s, Percocets, Opanas, and I had my choice. So I started purchasing pills on the street at about $30 a pop. At the peak of my addiction, I was taking about 560 milligrams a day of oxycodone. So you can imagine 7 80 milligram tablets at $30 a pill. It's $210 a day times 7 days a week. Over a couple of years, I spent well over $100,000 just on pills. The levee broke, of course, when my wife found out. And I'll just say that denial is a very, very powerful thing in addiction for family and members of your family that are affected by addiction. And I switched to heroin because I could get an 1/8 of a gram of heroin on the street for $10, right down the street at Golden Gate and Hyde. Eventually, that led me into homelessness, and I've spent 6 months on the streets of the Tenderloin between January and June of 2018. I ended up getting arrested, going to jail because I was holding drugs for the Honduran dealers out there. I was actually a mule for them. I was a holder. I got caught holding 6 different gym socks for 6 different dealers full of drugs by the police. And instead of going to jail like you see on The Wire, I spent 16 hours in jail, and then they released me on my own recognizance right back into homelessness, back out onto the street to go through the same washing machine cycle again. Now, it's been about 4.5 years that I've been in recovery. I ended up spending 3 months in jail, eventually went to a 6-month inpatient rehab in San Francisco, and got a job, went to go live in a sober living environment in San Francisco, and after a lot of counseling, I reconciled with my wife and kids, and I'm back home with them now. And now I've become an activist. Yeah. Thank you. And I've become an activist. You can find me on Twitter. That's kind of where my activism was born, was Twitter and Reddit. All my stuff's on social media pretty much. So if you guys are on Twitter, I'm T Wolf Recovery, and you'll see me be a very outspoken activist for changes to our approach to the drug and homeless crisis, because the two are intertwined together here in San Francisco, maybe more than any other city in the United States. San Francisco is the epicenter of the opioid and overdose crisis in the United States, and it totally intersects with homelessness, and we need to do something about it. Thank you.
Really incredible stories, and it's amazing to hear the turnaround stories. So, for us that want to, understand the journey of someone who's currently on the street seeking help, can you walk us through what does that look like? That process for somebody to seek services from the city and try to get off the street.
You talking about homelessness or addiction?
Well, homelessness, and it could be someone who's struggling with addiction, or and maybe before we get there, it might be that you think that a lot of the people on the street choose to be on the street. So maybe we could even start there. How many people choose to be on the street, do you think, versus would want to find a path out?
Well, I mean, that's a difficult question and a difficult answer. When you say how many people out there that want to be on the street, I would say 0. But we don't offer them the proper alternative. Just like every one of you in this room, if you want to move into a place or get a place or change your situation of living, you got choices. I don't come to you and say, look, I don't like where you're living, young lady. I'm going to put you in this room right here, and you'll go like a robot. And that's what we do to folks. We don't find out and you need to go to people and says, what would it take to get you off the street tonight? They may say, well, I want to go to Holiday Inn, or I want to go back to my cousin's house in Georgia. I don't have enough money to get there. I want to go live on a boat out in Sausalito, or what? You need to find out. And maybe you can't give them exactly what they want, but try to give them something closer. But what we do is say, hey, we're going to tear up your tent. We're going to throw your tent in the garbage. You need to come with us right now to that 50 Bryan shelter. The thing about a tent, the unique thing about a tent is something that you all have. It's yours. You call the shots in it. You decide who's going to come in. You decide who's going to sleep next to you. You decide when to turn the music on. You decide when to open it to get light in. That's you. That's yours. And that's what we all strive for as Americans or citizens or human beings, to have our own. Now you finally got your own tent. Now I'm going to take you out of it, put you in a room this size with 300 people in a room this size, where the line for the bathroom 24 hours a day is 6 deep. No, you can't do that, because you've taken away their autonomy completely and going to put them in the congregate shelter where you don't even want to go in that bathroom if you do get in there. So when you, and then the city denied services. Hell yeah, they denied that service, because that tent is a better situation for them than that congregate shelter. And we just wrote denied service. Oh, he didn't want to get off the street. Yes, he did. Or yes, she did. But look what you offered him.
And so right now, from my understanding, we have a system, like you're saying, where we've got these shelters, these short-term shelters, which would be the first place that maybe people are expected to go. And then maybe from there, they try to find some long-term housing, or they, kind of get upgraded somewhere else. What are these shelters like? And, if there's something that's like a short-term triaging kind of place where you can kind of get off the street, like what would you imagine other solutions for that kind of a thing could look like?
We need, if we're going to have congregate shelters, we need to be dignified congregate shelters, that you give some sense of privacy, some sense of autonomy, some basic decent living. You got to have a staff that's not making $17 an hour. A staff person who's making $17 an hour is an asshole, because he don't want to be here for $17 an hour. He's not going to take no shit from nobody because he's making $17 an hour, and you better leave him alone. But if we would pay people the same price that people in the city make, like we were just discussing earlier, he's a case manager making $17 an hour, but his counterpart for the city of San Francisco is making $65 an hour. And so the thing is, the city recognizes you have to pay people to do a good job, but when they subcontract these shelters, there are no city employees working in the shelter. And we got dozens of shelters. City employees do not do that kind of work. They subcontract it to organizations, nonprofits. And the way the contract is written, you can only pay people, in order to make the contract, you can only pay people $17 to $19 an hour. And who wants to work at that rate? You're making $24 at McDonald's. And you got fairly decent people coming in the shelter. One thing about our homeless population, God bless them, God love them, I'm still part of them, is the fact that if any of you all, and you all seem like pretty nice people, pretty nice, smiling and confident, well-behaved, let me take your money away. Let me take every penny you got away. Believe me, bro, you're gonna have a different attitude. You ain't gonna be nice no more. You're gonna be pissed off at everybody because you're broke, and you might be dope sick, which is a sickness he can explain better, a sickness like you've never had in your life. So how can you come in and smile? So when we get these people in the shelter, they're not in the best mood because they're broken, dope sick. And then when the $17 an hour guy comes and is on. So maybe that answers a little bit.
Yeah, that's really helpful context. So just kind of taking a step back, love to understand what you guys think the biggest causes of homelessness are. Why do most people end up on the street or stay on the street?
Well, that's a great and complicated question. About 25,000 different answers to that.
Right.
But look, so you can point at a few different things. So yeah, we'll talk about, there's a lack of affordable housing. Truth. Early childhood trauma. That's true. That's one of the main drivers of homelessness. a breakdown in family structure. That's absolutely one of the causes of homelessness. Drugs. I know people say, oh, no, it's not. It's one of the causes of homelessness, because it's funny, because when you interview people and they say, did drugs play a part in you becoming homeless? And about 25, 26% of the people say, no, yes, it did. Okay, that means 75% said no. But then when you ask people that are on the street right now, are you using drugs? It's like 80% are using drugs. So something's not jiving there with those stats, right? So those are a bunch of different factors. Not really good job training. I mean, there's this whole generation of kids that are, if you go down to the Tenderloin right now, you look at the demographic on the street, okay? You've got a bunch of OGs that are out there that have been out there for a while, and then you got these young white kids, these young white boys and girls. They're all tatted up in their early, mid-20s that came down from the Northern California, Oregon, and Washington, and they've come all the way down the coast. And they're all the way down in Venice and LA and in Skid Row and all that, and all through the coast of California. And you have to start asking why. Why has that subset of that generation quit on society? What is it? What is going on there? And the answer lies in a lot of different things, but crappy public education, generational drug use, parents who are alcoholics and drug addicts, right? Broken homes. That's trauma. That's early childhood trauma, and it messes up those kids. And then, there's a lack of health insurance for some kids out there. They don't get the proper medical attention. And so all those things factor into it, and then they start smoking meth because they need to self-medicate, right? And then pretty soon you're all methed out, man, and you think the FBI is chasing you, and you think you're being you're being gang-stalked, and helicopters are chasing you for real. That's what they really think. And they end up out on the street because they don't feel safe anywhere else. Now, the stuff that Del was saying about the tents, I don't completely agree with some of that. I mean, I get what he's saying. We do need to have dignified shelter space for people. But one of the other things I wanted to talk about briefly on that is that if you're homeless on the street and you want to access drug treatment, like you finally decide, hey, I'm a fentanyl addict, I've had enough, I need help. Did you know that you can't even get treatment without an ID? You can't get anybody to help you. And most homeless people on the street, the only ID they have is their jail wristband. That's the only ID I had. I had that orange wristband around my wrist because my ID had been stolen. So if you don't have an ID, imagine this. You're from Ohio, and you've come to San Francisco, and you're homeless, and you've lost your ID. In order to get your ID, because you never got a California ID, you need to get your birth certificate from Ohio. How are you going to do that if you're homeless? And then when you do get your birth certificate from Ohio, to apply for your ID here, that takes how many weeks? And all that time you're living on the street, and you're using drugs, and you want to access drug treatment, you want to go to detox, you can't. Those are the kind of barriers that we need to look at changing if we want to really make an impact. We can talk about homelessness all day. We can probably strike some kind of agreement on the tent thing and all that stuff, and everybody's cool. But if you don't have proper identification, nobody wants to help you out there on the street. So you're just invisible, truly invisible, but in plain sight in front of everybody doing your business. And that's not dignified for that individual, but that also harms the community all too often, because that person usually turns to self-medication, or many times turns to self-medication. They end up on drugs, and now there's a demand for those drugs. And so who shows up? The drug dealer shows up on the corner to start slinging that dope, and that's what we have in the Tenderloin right now. And it plays out every single day. And now with the arrival of illicit fentanyl, all those people are dying. And that's not right, and we need to change that.
So that's a really great issue to call out. Let's say that you want help and you do have an ID. What would that process look like for actually getting help?
Help for what though? Like for addiction treatment?
Yeah, addiction treatment.
So addiction treatment, that's a whole thing. There's only a couple of places you can go, and most places you need a referral anyway. So you have to go somewhere, and the Tenderloin Center was one place. They just closed. I've been very critical of the Tenderloin Center, but not because it wasn't a place you couldn't get connected, but was because they were allowing the drug use inside. And as a former drug user, I really believe that you could have put your drugs in your pocket for an hour and gone in there and accessed services, and you would have been cool, right? That's really what I believe. That's just what I believe. But if you have an ID and you want to access services, you can go to the Department of Public Health between the hours of 9 to 1, Monday through Friday, not even bankers hours, shorter than that, okay? You can go to Health Right 360 if there's room and wait in line in the morning and see if they've got a bed. San Francisco has 57 detox beds in a city with at least 22,000 drug users and a population of 850,000. 57 detox beds in the entire city. And why do you think there's all these people? They've got nowhere to go. And so we house them, right? We put them in SROs, right? We're going to hook you up. We're going to put you in a shelter-in-place hotel during the pandemic, right? Everybody was like, oh, shelter-in-place hotels. Just in 2 of the hotels during that time, 92 people died of drug overdose. Turns out that the drugs were way more dangerous than COVID was. 2020 hindsight, we didn't know. It turns out that's how it went down. So we need to learn lessons from that and not make that same mistake again. And we need to enlarge the solution space so that we can have all the permanent supportive housing that you want. I'm cool with that. I support that. But you got to start offering therapeutic communities, abstinence-based therapeutic communities, medically assisted treatment therapeutic communities to give people a chance to get into recovery and stabilize permanently.
So how do these detox facilities need to be different from like shelters? And do you feel like there are a lot of people on the streets who would actually, seek those out if they could?
Well, they got to be run like a clinic. It's got to be clinically run, not institutionally run. We tend to have employees in these detox centers who walk around with their hat on sideways, with the earbuds in. Hey, what's up, dude? Where you actually need a clinician who appears to be a clinician, who appears to be professional, dealing with you. Otherwise, there's no respect in between the two. And we don't do that. And just more from his point, if then tomorrow morning during those business hours he's talking about, if you wanted to get clean and seek treatment on demand, it will probably be 2 weeks before you will see a bed.
That's right.
What's going to happen in those 2 weeks? You're going to use again. And it might be years before you get to that point where you want to seek treatment again. And that's what we need, real treatment on demand, 24/7. Just like right now, if I wanted to stop using, I got to wait, first of all, till 9 o'clock in the morning to see if I can get a bed. There's probably 20% chance of me getting a bed tomorrow, or maybe even less than that. So it's they'll give you what we call a sobering center, where you can go lay down for 2 or 3 hours. What good is that going to do? It's Band-Aids, where we got major lacerations.
And if you don't have an ID, it's a 0% chance, not even 20.
So what we do, I run a nonprofit, and we have vouchers for DMV where I can get you an ID free. We would give them out, and it turns out no one was getting there because, again, we found out that people are actually using, they'll make detours. They'll head towards DMV, but somebody's got a bag of dope, left turn. So what we do now at my organization called 10 More, we take you there. We have 3 or 4 employees' cars. We take you there to DMV. We sit there and wait until you get the ID. Because like it says, you can do nothing in San Francisco without an ID. Nothing. And again, sending for that birth certificate, a lot of states now use vendors to get you your birth certificate. These vendors are $78. You got to pay this vendor $78, and they'll overnight it to you. You can't just go to the city clerk anymore. This thing's become all digitalized. So,
and if you're homeless, it's just another barrier that you're not even going to bother with. And if you're struggling with addiction, forget it.
Yeah.
So let's say you're one of the lucky ones and you do get a bed and you get to detox. What would typically happen to you after that? If, say, you don't have a job, you don't necessarily have a place to go. What would happen to you today? And in an ideal world, what do you think should happen?
Well, okay, so you go to detox from anywhere from 7 to 30 days in a detox bed, depending on the facility. Here at Harbor Light, you can stay there for up to 30 days in detox. And then from there, they'll invite you to go into their inpatient program, which is an abstinence-based program. So you're gonna, if you're on medically assisted treatment, they'll drive you to the clinic to use your methadone, but while you're there in the program, you can't use. Health Right 360 is different. They're a little more liberal with their medically assisted use, right? Methadone, Suboxone, and those are very important tools to help someone, because Suboxone is an opioid agonist, so it actually kicks off the fentanyl in your brain receptors and replaces it, and it lets you function at a much higher level, right? And that helps you maybe pursue recovery, and that's where medically assisted treatment is necessary, because quite frankly, you can't kick fentanyl cold turkey. It's not like the old days of heroin where you could white knuckle it. You've heard that term. I'm going to white knuckle it. You can't. Fentanyl's too strong. You need help. So if you're in a rehab and you go through detox and you want to go to rehab, yeah, you can go to a 6-month inpatient program like I did. I was in a 6-month inpatient program. I was housed, clothed, fed, given 12-step and spiritual counseling, and it was all for free. And regardless of how you feel about the spiritual aspect or the abstinence-based aspect of it, that program ended my homelessness. Because from there, they also gave me workforce development and they helped me find a job. So it depends on the program, depends on how long the program is. It depends on if you have the means to pay for it or not. The program I went to was actually free. It didn't cost me any money. I went through the Salvation Army. It didn't cost me any money, but you know, I'm in their house. That means I had to go to church twice a week. So if you're cool with that, that's a good program for you. If you're not, there's other programs where you have to sign up for Medi-Cal, and then you're subject to Medi-Cal requirements, and those requirements are that you can only have 2 treatment episodes in your entire lifetime on Medi-Cal, and you can only be in rehab up to 90 days, and then after that, they stop paying for it, and then you're out, right? And that's what a lot of these rehabs here in the city, that's how they operate. And I'm not critical of them, they're trying to help people, but until we figure that part out. So there has to be changes at the state level and everything to help people take that next step in recovery. There's no transitional housing. What happens after you finish your rehab? Where do you go? Is there step-down housing? There's only a couple of 100 beds in all of San Francisco for that right now. And most of it's not sober housing, so if you're in recovery, you gotta live around other people that are actively using, like in SROs.
Yeah.
So if you're in recovery in the Tenderloin, if you're in recovery like I am, where I'm abstinent from drugs and alcohol, I haven't touched it in 4.5 years, right? And I was living in the Tenderloin, that's why I had to get out of the Tenderloin. Because I gotta get out and go to work, I gotta walk through 12 drug dealers on my way to work. Well, I mean, even when I moved out and I was taking the BART, I still had to walk through 12 drug dealers on my way to work. How are you gonna stay clean in that environment? You don't. You just don't.
So what do you think transitional housing should look like?
Well, it can look like a lot of different things. I mean, it can be from permanent supportive housing that's, you know, where you just kind of live in your own life with dignity, right? All the way to kind of a supportive recovery-based environment that has more wraparound services for those who need it. See, everybody's different that's out there. Yeah, you got people struggling with mental illness, you got people struggling with addiction, you've got people that are struggling with both addiction and mental illness. You've got just folks that fell on their luck, that got kids, that need a better environment, a stable environment for their kids so they can go to school. So there's no like one size fits all, and that's kind of what we're caught up in right now. We're caught up in a one size fits all situation with our housing stock, where it's just like, hey, you know, I'm not down against housing first. Housing first in a perfect environment works, like in Finland, which is a pretty much a perfect environment. It works. But it's not working in San Francisco that well, and that's reflective of the overdose deaths that are happening inside. 60% of all OD deaths in San Francisco happened inside last year, not on the street. Right. And many of those happened in the Tenderloin and permanent supportive housing. So you have to start thinking, like we have to start changing our way of thinking, because fentanyl has forced us to pivot, because it has changed the game.
So yeah, the other answer to that would be, again, just like you said, one size does not fit all. You got folks in recovery who want to be over in their room by themselves, away from you all. Then you got other people who want to come in a room like this and kick it. They would rather live in a dorm. You know, that's just, some people don't feel comfortable being in a room. You know, we have given keys to people in the Tenderloin to hotel rooms, and 2 days later, I'm walking by and they're laying on the ground in a sleeping bag. I said, what's up with you, man? I just gave you a room for 30 days. Man, I can't go up in that room. Those walls are too small. I got to be out here with the folks. You know, that social thing. People are different. You know, transitional housing can look like a lot. And again, to piggyback on what you said, 90-day program ain't nothing. Won't do nothing. Minimum, I would think, would be 6 months to get actual treatment. 90 days is nothing. You're still confused on that 89th day. You still don't really feel confident. You're still sick. That dope is still in you. You haven't used it in 90 days, but believe me, those chemicals are still in you that's burning your brains out, wanting to get it again, wanting to get more. That's really not enough time to get your character together because there's a lot of nuances to recovery. I've been in recovery 12 years, and my meeting today, I do 3 meetings a week. Now, I shouldn't have to do 3 meetings a week. In fact, I actually feel like I don't have to, but I want to. I just want to keep reminding myself that we ain't a dope fiend no more. I have to keep reminding myself, even when I walk up and down the streets of the Tenderloin, there's 2 different days in recovery that are very important. One, of course, is the day that you stop using drugs, right? Isn't that an important day? Not the most important day. The most important day is the day that you don't want to use drugs no more. Those days may be 1 day apart. For me, it was 3 years. Those are the worst 3 years of my life. From the day I stopped using drugs to the day that I wanted to stop using drugs. I fought that demon every day, every night, every morning, every afternoon. Wanted to get high, wanted to get high. I was mad at the world because I wanted to get high, but I had made a commitment that I'm not going to get high. And I was fighting, these demons in my mind was fighting me all day long, all night long. And then finally I woke up one day, didn't feel nothing. Didn't feel nothing. And I remember right about that time, I do walking tours of the Tenderloin, believe it or not. And I had 3 doctors from South America on the tour. And we happened to end the tour on my block on the corner that I sold drugs and used drugs, on my favorite corner. We just coincidentally happened to end it. And the doctors went in their pocket and gave me 3 $100 bills. I put those money in my pocket. I went down and got on BART and went home. I was living in Fairfield then. And then when I got home, I said, damn. I had 3 $100 bills on my dope corner. And never gave it a thought. Never gave it a thought. And I said, wow. So.
And what a journey people have to go through to go through this recovery process. Tom, you'd mentioned that this housing first principle, and for people that are dealing with substance abuse issues, it seems that there are 2 big schools of thought in the city right now. There's kind of the recovery first folks and the housing first folks. How would you describe those different groups, and what are your thoughts on that distinction?
So I think the distinction has to be made that it's not the recovery first people aren't against housing first. Mm-hmm. That's the big misnomer.
How would you describe what those groups are to start?
So housing first idea is building 100% or as close to 100% affordable housing with no preconditions for people to go live in, just like you have no preconditions to live. Okay, seems pretty reasonable, right? How about if you're a fentanyl addict and you get put in an 80 square foot room as your permanent supportive housing with access to the dope right outside because you've got 12 dealers, like literally outside the door, right? What do you think then? Do you think that that's still a good idea? What if you have mental illness and you have a case manager getting $22 an hour as your only resource to help you get your mental health appointment?
Who has 200 other clients.
Right. Oh, who then he quit last week, actually, so you got to go to somebody new that you don't even know, that's fresh out of college that doesn't know what they're doing. Does that sound like a good idea? Because that is exactly what happens in San Francisco for a lot of people that get housed through permanent supportive housing here, through Housing First. There are some people that do very well, and I'm happy for them. So the folks that are talking about like the recovery first model is that we just want to have a bigger space, right? We're not against housing first. Build all the housing that you want. I'm pro housing. I voted for Scott Wiener twice, okay? Build all the housing that you can, but we need to enlarge the solution space and start thinking therapeutic communities, okay? The TRP Academy is a place that just opened last year in San Francisco, and that was through adult probation, through the reentry division. And it's a sober living therapeutic community. It's not a rehab for people that were justice involved, exiting the criminal justice system, where they could live up to 2 years in a drug-free environment, right? We have to start having those kind of models available for the public too, not just for people that are coming out of the criminal justice system, as an alternative for those that would benefit from it. Not as a you have to go there, but as, hey, you know what? You can get on the list for permanent supportive housing, you can wait 3 years, or I can have you in this place over here the day after tomorrow, but the only thing is, man, is that you're going to have to go on methadone and give up the fentanyl. Are you cool with that? Does that sound like a good idea? It sounds like a good idea to me, and the city does not. The city's coming around, let's put it that way. They're starting to come around. But it took 2,000 overdose deaths in the last 3 years.
The media.
It took 300 to 500 organized drug dealers on our streets throwing down. It took 66 kilos of illicit fentanyl getting seized this year off the streets of the Tenderloin before even some of the supervisors are coming around. And they've come around, but it's still not a majority of the supervisors. There's only 5. You need 6 to make it happen. Yeah. And the mayor's kind of always on the fence all the time because it's the mayor. So, we haven't even talked about the police and their role, which is, a challenge in and of itself. So there's really kind of no easy answer except that the Recovery First people just want to enlarge the space so that we have more alternatives, more beds. So there's so many other things that have happened in the last few years. Before that, I mean, there was federal legislation in 2016 called the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act, okay? And it made access to medically assisted treatment easier for people, which is great, right? Methadone and Suboxone made it easier for you to get if you're struggling with addiction. But you know what it also did? It stopped all the funding for abstinence-based programs that were getting grants and gave them a choice. Either you guys pivot and start accepting medically assisted treatment clients, or you're going to lose the funding. And a lot of those abstinence-based programs shut down because they weren't willing to compromise their principles. And regardless of how you feel about that, those were net beds lost from what we need right now. And here we are, fast forward 6 years later, and we're facing a real, real bad crisis.
That term, permanent supported housing, has a very exaggerated word, and that's supported. That the support you get in San Francisco's permanent supported housing is nil to zero. And that's the problem. I happen to agree with you 100% about housing first and the needs that we really have. And the ideal is, of course, to get you ready to be a tenant. If you just came off that pipe yesterday, you will not make a good tenant. You are not used to paying nobody $400 a month or $4,000 a month. Pay him $4,000 a month when I got all this dope down the street? Nowhere in the world are you gonna pay your rent. If you're a dope fiend, I don't know any dope fiend that really pays their rent. That's a what they call it? What do they call it when it's this oxymoron or something?
Yeah, it's an oxymoron. Drugs aren't free.
College words, Webster words. But yeah, you just don't do that. So you got to educate a person and guide them to being a tenant. You can't play your radio all night long because you have paid your rent. Because there's other people living in this building, dude. You're not living in, you're not living in the desert. You're living next to 90 other people who might have to get up in the morning. You can't have your cousin sitting on the porch smoking a blunt all day. You got to learn how to be a tenant. You've been out in that tent situation where you can do any damn thing you want. Now we're bringing you into a building with other people. So you got to come around, and that's what Housing First does not have that ability. Because like he says, you might have a case manager that actually only works 4 hours a day. You can't find them on the weekend. So if you do have a crisis after 5 on the weekend, you got to wait till Monday. And so now it's not a crisis anymore. So.
Yeah. So you guys have mentioned case managers a few times. What's the process for getting a case manager, and do you feel like we need to be doing more in the city to make more case managers available?
Yeah, well, at my organization, we have case manager classes. So we graduate about 40 case managers a month. And again, we're trying to get the city to change their vendor policy and give the nonprofits more money to pay. Case managers should make a minimum of $40 an hour, and they're making 17 to 20. And just like I just read the report of the pay rate, you all have seen it, the pay rate in San Francisco, the average pay at City Hall and San Francisco offices is $175,000. Our school teachers still make $67,000. So we're not paying the people that is really necessary to help our people that are struggling with addiction. Is a disease. It's not a habit, it's a disease. No different than cancer. And you just like you can't walk up to someone with cancer and say, get rid of that cancer. Yeah, I wish. You can't walk up to the dope fiend and say, get rid of that addiction. I wish. We need treatment. You gotta have treatment for that. And it's so easy for any of us to walk around. Why has that guy got a needle in his arm? Because he's sick. He's sick. Somewhere along the line, he picked up an addiction, which is a disease. And he's sick, and he needs treatment. Can't treat him in jail. Can't treat him in that tent, but you can treat him in a clinic, a clinical atmosphere. And I keep saying him, I'm so sexist here. I should say you can't treat that person.
Yeah. And Tom, you mentioned the police. What is it that the police are doing right now? And how do you think the policy there should change?
Well, first of all, okay, so I'm trying to be cool about this and be neutral about it, but look, San Francisco's down 500 to 600 cops from what their normal staffing level is supposed to be, right? And if you look at it on a per capita basis between New York City and San Francisco, so New York City has a population of like 10 million, and they have 25,000 cops. Right? San Francisco has a population of 800,000, and we're supposed to have like 2,200 cops, but we've got like 1,400 right now. Okay? Some people are okay with that. They're fine with that, and I'm not going to sit here and debate with you whether it's right or wrong, but the real issue here is infrastructure. Okay? So we don't have enough cops. We don't want to use the jail anymore, but there's people out there that are robbing, cheating, stealing, that are struggling with poverty, that are struggling with addiction, mental illness, and we have nowhere to send them. Nowhere. There's nowhere for them to go, really. 500 treatment beds in all of San Francisco, again, for 22,000 drug users. 500. 57 detox, 500 drug treatment beds. And we have 12,000 units of permanent supportive housing, and most of them are full. And they're going to spend $500, $600 million over the next 3 years to build 3,000 units. Almost $1 billion. It's like, that still doesn't solve our problem. We've got somewhere between 7,000 and 20,000 homeless people in San Francisco. Yeah. Nobody really knows how many. You haven't been out to the Candlestick Point and seen the RVs out there. There's hundreds of RVs out there. Not just the people in tents in the Tenderloin. You got whole families that are homeless out there. What about them? So what are the police doing? They're overwhelmed, but their hands are tied at the same time. There's been state laws that have been changed around what we can criminalize and what has been decriminalized, what's a felony, what's a misdemeanor. There's been a ton of paperwork added for racial equity purposes to when a cop fills out a police report. So instead of it taking 2 hours to do a police report, it pulls him off the street for 4 to 5 hours for every single incident that he that he has to complete, for better or for worse. So the answer is that they really can't do much except just be a presence of guys on the street to try to provide some kind of public safety, which they're apparently doing a great job of in Union Square right now, because they pulled pretty much all the cops from the Tenderloin precinct and SFPD Southern up there, and it's kind of been a free-for-all at least the last couple weeks that I've been in the TL. It's kind of a free-for-all right now, man.
It is. I mean, we got to protect Gucci, though.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, sir.
Man. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like a combination of not enough cops, some bad policies in place tying their hands, and the fact that we need more housing in places to, put people and support.
Look, if we had the infrastructure, we wouldn't need all the extra cops, but we don't have the infrastructure. So we're literally at a crossroads, and we just recalled the DA. Now we have a new DA. So now we're at a crossroads looking at the police. Are they doing a good job? Are they not doing a good job? What resources do they need? But what other resources can we put on top of that so that we don't need to say, oh, we got to hire 700 cops right now?
Yeah.
We can say, we can hire them over time and ramp it up, because we're going to provide all these other services too, which we're still not really doing. And they tried it with the Tenderloin Center, and I don't know how y'all feel about that, but that was $22 million. And is the situation better?
So when you say we need more infrastructure, that's including the clinical beds, shelters, housing.
Yeah, we need right to shelter in San Francisco. I'm sorry, we do, like New York City has.
New York has it, yeah.
We need a right to shelter ordinance here. That's what Supervisor Mandelman is pushing. We need it. It's time to say we're going to have a shelter bed for every single homeless person that's here. It should be a dignified shelter.
You got to have it. Got to be dignified. You got to have someone who is comfortable to come in and be happy to be there, and you got to treat them like they are citizens of San Francisco, and they're no different than any of us. We're citizens of San Francisco. We should be treated with dignity and respect. Right. And we haven't done that. Cities like Chicago and New York especially dealt with vagrancy bums, as they called them back during the Depression. So we got organizations like Salvation Army that's got decades of experience dealing with unhoused folks. Well, we don't have that in San Francisco yet, because you go to when we were over there talking. You go to New York today, I was in Chicago all last week. I think I saw maybe 3 or 4 homeless, and I was in all the rough neighborhoods because I'm doing research on the differences between Chicago, Boston. I was in Memphis last month, Baltimore the month before that, and you don't see them because they are taken, most of them have right to shelters, and they're taken care of. Out here, we just don't have that right. You know,
Which is free and easy out here.
we have the money. The good thing about it is we have the money. I'm actually a director at Department of Homelessness, and I've been on the board of directors for like 7 years. We have the money,
Right.
but we don't know how to use it.
Yeah. So where is that money going? And how do you think we should be diverting that money?
The money's going to a lot administratively at HSA in the city of San Francisco. We got a whole bunch of captains and lieutenants, if this was in the Army, and not enough privates. You know, not enough money going to Tyrone. The money should be going to Tyrone and Sheila, not to Deputy Director Sam and Deputy Director who are making $300,000 a year. And the money never gets to Tyrone and Sheila. The intent is to get to Tyrone and Sheila, but it never gets there.
Yeah, we need more transparency,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. So if people wanted to volunteer their time, where do you think they could be the most helpful?
Join an organization in the Tenderloin, south of Market, the mission that has a mentor component where you can come and be a mentor. What we do, the ideal is that you will mentor one person. We don't want you to be a sugar daddy or a sugar mama, but you be the person they can call and say, hey, what's your name? Hello. Hey, hello, I got a new job. Because they have no one to call. They have pissed off their family. They have no family connection. The guys sitting around the tent, they could care less about you getting a job. You got to have some, hey, Dale, I got a job, man. Oh, good, man. Do you need a ride to work? Do you need some bus tokens or whatever? And also you can call, man, the boss is really up my ass today. What do I do, Dale? And then I can mentor you. On your birthday, bring you something nice. Or on your anniversary, your 6-month anniversary on your new job, call and take you out to Starbucks or Red Lobster or something. That's the kind of the volunteer effort we need. Let me tell you real easily, we don't need your food. We got too much food in our neighborhoods. You handing the guy a plate of food, look at his feet, he ain't got no shoes. So be creative in what you want to do. You can join a project like ours or Glide or St. Anthony's, or you can do your own thing. Go through that drawer, and your dresser drawer, the one at the top left, with all those socks that you never wear, you thought they was ugly when you bought them, and you keep pushing them to the back of the drawer, bring them out. We can wear them. We can wear them. Those coats that you went down to Target and you thought looked great, and when you got home, why did I buy this? And you know where it is, it's in the back of your closet. Go to that back of the closet tonight. Bring that stuff out. Bring it down to one of our agencies. You know, we don't have laundromats in the Tenderloin. There probably are, but no one's got quarters. So we tend to wear our clothes until they just shred. Yep. So ain't no cleaning clothes, we need replacement clothes. You cannot there's no way you can bring us too many clothes. And that's dignity.
Can I add something?
Yeah,
please. Go ahead.
So everything he said, plus start educating yourself on the issue of homelessness and what it means. Look past the term housing as a human right and all that stuff you see on Twitter and all that. Read deeper into the crisis of homelessness and the intersection of homelessness with drugs, and learn about the term open drug scene. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. Be willing to listen to people on all sides of the spectrum on this, because this is a humanitarian crisis. It's been politicized, but it is a humanitarian crisis. So the Republicans have just as much to invest in it as the Democrats do. So we all need to kind of come together on this, because this is our country, this is our home, this is our community. Regardless of your political beliefs, we have to kind of try to come together and find some kind of solution that works together, that we can move forward on. Understand, like search for the truth. Understand, look past the people that just say, it's just a housing problem, nothing else, because it's not. Yeah. I think we've made both a pretty strong case tonight that it's a lot more complicated than that. Drugs are a huge problem in the United States now. There are 17 million people addicted to a substance in the United States. It's not caffeine or nicotine. I'm talking about alcohol and harder than that, okay? And there's 23 million people in this country in recovery, so there's a way out for those people too. So you need to start thinking about recovery options for people, how to get people healthy, right? We always talk about, you hear that term wellness thrown around a lot now, right? What does wellness mean? It means healthy. And so recovery is healthy. Recovery from addiction is healthy. Recovery from homelessness is healthy. So, but you need to know the truth about homelessness, because we're going to build all that housing, but if we don't treat the underlying conditions, because everyone says that, oh, we're going to get those wraparound services and everything's going to be great. They just wheeled some kid out of Larkin Youth Services the day before yesterday that died of a drug overdose, living in transitional housing with full wraparound services. He died of drug overdose inside. Why? Because we're not really exploring those underneath issues, those underlying issues, and a lot of that has to do with drugs, before that childhood trauma, before that the family structure, before that affordability. There's all these different things, education, all that stuff. We need to really look at all that and invest in all that long term, but you need to promote recovery along the way, or this housing thing, I promise you, it's not going to work out the way that people want, and we're going to still have a homeless crisis 10, 20, 30 years from now.
And you know, you started this forum out by saying this is a forum about solving homelessness. I don't use that word. I use managing homelessness. Because I don't think we'll ever be able to solve it. If you go historically, and if any of you might be Christians in this room, you'll realize Jesus Christ was homeless. Never, you could go all through the Bible you want, you'll never find a place that he lived. So homelessness goes way back, and will continue to go. We can damn sure manage it better. If tonight we solve every homeless person, those 20,000 people, we got them all housed tonight, and whoo, the Greyhound is coming in at 9:30 from Tampa with 87 more. So, you know, we just, you know, for every, technically or statistically, for every person we house in San Francisco, we get 3 more coming in the same day. 4 more. 4 more coming in the same day. Now, you think about that as a statistic. That's a real statistic.
For every person housed in San Francisco, 4 become homeless at the same time.
Today, every day.
That's shocking. And we're not even the worst. LA.
Yeah, LA is terrible.
There's 188,000 homeless people in California. Just in California, 40% of the whole population, of the whole homeless population in the United States is in California. And we don't have a right to shelter in any city or county in the whole state of California. That's insane. And we say that we're going to build our way out of it? Really? No,
More than that.
It takes more than that.
Takes more. You can go stand on the corner like 6th and Main in downtown Los Angeles, which is Skid Row, and I go down there all the time to do research, and you can look north, south, east, west for blocks and blocks and see wall-to-wall double-line tents. Because in LA, it's not just one tent going on, they're double tents. Thousands and thousands of people standing on one corner. You can see thousands of homeless. And most of them are elderly black people, which hits me hard. Because the most emotional part of my life is, and I'm in the Tenderloin every day. I run several organizations in the Tenderloin. And the worst thing is for me to see an older black man my age laying on the ground, pissing on himself. Because that's me. It was me. But I look at that man and I ask my Lord, how were you able to take me out of this? Can't you do that for him? And I just wonder, we have failed miserably. And I go to church at Glide on Sunday morning. In fact, I preach there every 3 or 4 months. And 2 weeks ago when I went, I just walked to Tenderloin because I was early. I was in tears by the time I got back to the church. We ain't doing it right, man. We ain't doing people right. This is supposed to be the most creative, tech up city in the world, or area in the world, where we can send a rocket to the moon and come back and land upside down on a moving boat. We got Teslas that'll drive themselves, they'll even climb the steps. But we can't put sheetrock over someone's head. I was at Home Depot the other day. Sheetrock is $4 a sheet. What's the big deal? What's the problem? We can do all this tech shit, but we can't solve or manage our homeless problems. Something's wrong with us.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Amen. And that's why we're here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
we've got the talent, we've got the funding, we've got, you know, everything that we need, and you know, we need to coordinate. We need to work together. We need to, you know, put minds on this problem, and that's what we want to do.
We need to be honest. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
People aren't being honest about the homeless crisis. There's a subset of people on the street that require intervention. They just do. People that are against that need to get comfortable with that idea, period. And we're going to roll from there.
So this gives us a lot to work with. We do have some time for just a few questions from the audience. Great. Let's start with this woman over here. Nicole, you've got the mic. Oh, this one.
Who had a question?
Okay, well, I'm Pablo, I'm from Chile. I moved here 4 years ago, and the first thing that it surprised me is that my third world country doesn't have any homeless. We have camps, people live out of the camps and then they move on. But I was surprised that like San Francisco, the amount of homeless. And you also mentioned about the $400 or $200 a day that you might be spending into this. Who is making the profit at first, and second, how are you getting that much money? When I moved here, I didn't make that much.
Well, at the time that I was spending $210 a day on drugs, I had a job. I was still a functioning addict. When I became homeless, that was a different story. That's when I started having to do my hustle. I had to boost, I had to hold drugs for the dealers. I got on general assistance, just like all the stuff that you read on Twitter, that people say, oh, that doesn't really happen. Nope, that all happens. I did all of that because I needed my drugs. Drugs first and foremost. You don't have homeless people in your country, but we have homeless people here. Look, San Francisco is a very progressive city. It even has a strong streak of democratic socialism running through it. But it also has a weird libertarian streak running through it too, where there's this whole kind of body autonomy thing. You can do whatever you want. And that's all good until it starts causing harm to the community. And that's why people are uncomfortable, because the big thing in the tenderloin is harms to the community.
Yeah.
That's why you see people like Randy Shaw and myself like speaking up in the TL, because it's harms to the community. It's like, this community is like a community of color, 3,000 kids in the neighborhood. The kids got to be escorted to school and back every day, man. What if that was your neighborhood? It's not right, you know? And all those people are black and brown that live in that neighborhood. They're from the Middle East and all that stuff, and they got to go through all that. And so that doesn't mean necessarily more police. I'm with Dell, and I'm willing to work to find solutions where we can balance that out. I think criminal justice plays a role. If you look at what they do in Europe and the Netherlands and in Switzerland and all that, with their open drug scenes that they used to have, that they don't have even in Portugal, they had a combination of public health and the police working together on the street to mitigate the situation. In San Francisco, those guys hate each other.
Yeah.
They don't even want to talk to each other. It's defund the police on one side, and the other side is like, you guys are all woke and I don't want to talk to you. That's really how it is. Like, I've been out there. That's really how it is. That needs to change. Like, everybody needs to put down their ideology and get together and try to make something real happen, because people are dying. People are dying. Like, yeah, so, you know, look, I was homeless. I used to sleep in a doorway. And you know, people, not you, but people like you used to step right over me, you know, and that's a crappy feeling. It's really bad. And now I get to sit here and talk to all of you, and I have a home to go home to, and I have an income and all that stuff, and I'm happy, and I'm at peace with myself. But I will never forget the indignity of being homeless, and so I try to translate that in my message. And sometimes my message comes out a little bit harsh, but it's not because I'm against the homeless people. It's because I'm against the policies that we put forth. Our political leaders are out of touch, or they're captured by ideology, and it's crazy. It's like Republicans have good ideas about homelessness, but they're really mean-spirited about it. And the people on the far left, the progressives, they have good ideas about homelessness, but they believe in this body autonomy. You can just do whatever you want.
Do whatever you want.
Nah, man, the answer lies somewhere in between, and we need to come to that realization and work together.
The people at City Hall, if you go back to their high school yearbook, I would guarantee you'll see every one of them has a quote, does not play well with others.
My name is Tom. Thanks for speaking tonight. I've been in recovery for 10
Can't hear you.
years. I spent a lot of time working with people in the Salvation Army, other places like that, so I kind of know the drill. It seems to me that I'm really glad you had the courage to speak about some people need to be held involuntarily, and it's just the way it is. I wonder if there's a way to, what you think about reinstituting state mental health hospitals, given that incarceration isn't really probably appropriate, but some people, and I've seen this firsthand, especially those suffering from methamphetamine psychosis, are never going to reenter society. They're never going to be functional again. And also there could be a place for 6 months to a year that it takes somebody to let the cobwebs clear out a little bit. Maybe a mental health hospital focused on recovery would be the place for that. And then also I'm a business owner, and you know, there is a lot of goodwill towards the homeless and drug addicted in the Bay Area, but there are limits. And I can say personally, not to be, you know, sour grapes about it, but I came here a decade ago after graduate school. I would not have moved here. And eventually, I think what you're going to have is a death spiral here, where you have a very liberal and permissive drug policy that's going to continue to be a feeder system for people throughout the entire West Coast, and you're going to continually overload any form of infrastructure you put here to help people, and eventually there's going to be a collapse in the business community. But the mental health hospital is more what I'm interested in hearing you talk about. Thanks.
Well, I mean, I just don't feel just my personal feel that incarceration is a treatment for mental illness. Of course, Reagan, and we talk a lot of things about Reagan actually opened up and released people from these mental hospitals years ago, and his basic reason for doing that because it was cruel and unusual. You would have a man or woman locked up for 20 years because they pissed on themselves, and their wife or husband or mama or daddy didn't like it and would make a phone call, and they'd be locked away with no determinate time to be released. And that's not fair, that's not proper. Yes, we are our brothers and sisters keepers. And yes, a person with severe mental illness, and we have a lot in the Tenderloin, is maybe not as different as a 7-year-old child. If a 7-year-old child was misbehaving or doing, you would intervene, because that's our duties as adults. Maybe we need that same duty with a mentally ill person. That is our responsibility to get them help. Incarceration is a little tough for me to deal with. What do you think?
Well, so the last 2 years in California, the governor of California spent $25 billion on homelessness in the last 2 years. What if he'd spent that on mental health and addiction treatment too?
Yeah.
Or split the money between the two? We'd be seeing a lot better results for people. I personally believe that we need a statewide addiction and mental health treatment system. That doesn't necessarily mean open a bunch of mental hospitals. But at the same time, you know, it's 2022. It's not One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson. Okay? Times have changed, right? We're all way more aware about what's going on than we were in 1969 or 1975, okay? So I think that, and I think the medical standards are a lot higher now than they were. So I think that we could have some success with an expansion. We kind of have to, because there's so much untreated mental illness out there. I mean, that's the thing that, like, we talk about drugs all day, but there's untreated mental illness happening out there, and it got a lot worse during the pandemic. And people are just saying, hey, use telehealth and call a number and you can talk to somebody. Yeah, that's good, but some people need more advanced care than that. And there's really nowhere to send them. And if you do need to put them somewhere, it takes months or even years to get them into a bed if they have a real severe mental illness in California. And there's so many hoops to jump through, all these different laws and rules and qualifications, and like they've made it so convoluted, right? They've made it super impossible. So that whole system, I think, needs to be scrapped, and we need to rewrite the book on mental health and mental health treatment and addiction treatment. And the state needs to take a more active role. Not the state as in like jackboot thug guys with guns, but as a state of more a clinical support role to help work with private health insurance and private hospitals and public hospitals and have more of that available so that more people have access to treatment. Because right now, unless you have really good health insurance, the window is like that big to get mental health treatment in the United States, and especially in California.
And you know, we have a conservative policy in San Francisco instituted about 4 or 5 years ago, and they did the survey through the 911, the paramedics, the fire department records, only 4 people in the city of San Francisco qualified for that conservatism. And you walk down any street in the Tenderloin, you'll see 100.
Yeah.
But according to the guidelines of the city, only 4 people were frequent flyers enough that they will qualify for that.
That's that libertarian streak that we were talking about.
Yeah,
And yes, I
yeah.
agree with you in the back about that we're heading towards some kind of death spiral between downtown being empty and all the business tax revenue going away and all those commercial leases of all those buildings expiring. And no one's really talking about that. And we should be ringing like severe alarm bells about that, because this city used to live and breathe out of the financial district.
Yeah.
And you might be cool if you live in Coal Valley, man, right now, working from home, but what's going to happen to that downtown when it really starts to decay? Right now they're maintaining it, but in 3, 4, 5 years, it's going to be like a scene out of Road Warrior, man,
Yeah,
if
it
we
will.
don't
It'll be a
get that
ghost town.
fixed up and handled.
Hello, quick question. My question is in regards to kind of the concentration of homelessness within certain areas. I live in Oakland personally, and there tends to be a concentration of homeless people within a certain community, and the burden tends to be heavy on that specific community. And it's similar with San Francisco and the Tenderloin. And so one of the questions I had for you all is, do you think that it is of any benefit to kind of spread the burden of, you know, of the services that are provided to the homeless around the more of the community, as far as around San Francisco, and then also if you do spread out, you know, the homeless population around the Bay Area, how would you contain the sense of community around the folks who are used to seeing the same people?
That's a huge challenge, right?
Yeah, I mean, you more or less, this city should have a homeless treatment, a homeless shelter in every district.
Right.
But the problem with that is the people out here, they got London Breed's private cell phone number. We got her generic cell phone number. So as soon as you're talking about a shelter in Presidio, they're picking up 2 o'clock in the morning, London, what the hell are you doing? So that's why yes, every citizen in San Francisco should be part of the burden of managing homelessness. We shouldn't all have to have homeless shelters all over the Tenderloin. Yeah, you're exactly right. And I know the area you're talking about in Oakland, I actually live on the east side now. It's ridiculous. That Wood Street encampment along 12th Street by the BART Run, you know, I think we both know what you're talking about. So yeah, it should be equally distributed, but it will never happen in San Francisco. San Francisco, too of a political payback city, where people got the mayor's cell phone number and say, hey, I'm up here in Presidio, you know who I am, stop that shit right now, shut it down. And that's where we are.
So the thing is we've got 11 districts in San Francisco, and if we put a navigation center in every district, which I support,
Yeah.
you know, it's like that term, like it's a big, you know, the S word sandwich, and everybody has to take a bite.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it is in San Francisco. We're too small not to. We're the size of Disneyland, remember? 7 by 7, 49 square miles. So we're all going to have to take a bite, right? But even if you put a navigation center in each community, that's still not enough shelter to house all the homeless people. So we need to think a lot bigger than that. Maybe in the interim, we need to start thinking about FEMA, like calling for the feds, not the DEA, but the feds, FEMA, to come in, set up some disaster shelters, like if it was a natural disaster.
This is a natural
This is a natural disaster. It's like a hurricane, but it's like a perpetual getting hit every day with a hurricane in San Francisco. And we're just sitting here saying, well, you know, if you die, hey, that's your choice, civil liberties, hey, cool. Really? When do we draw the line?
And you answer this lady, she could raise her hand first.
Oh yeah, let's do one last one.
Yeah. Now she'll probably ask a question that really gets us.
Yeah, right.
Why did
That
I
last
call
one
on her?
that was a good one, though. That last one.
Thanks so much, you guys. That was
Okay.
amazing. I'm sensing rage within San Francisco more than I have ever seen in my life here. And it's directed not at the police. It's not even directed at the homeless, drug users. It's directed at the people who we don't elect. These are people in the departments who are making those $300,000 plus salaries or $150,000 salaries. A lot of them, we don't even know their names, right? And I was just sitting here thinking, if they were up here, I think they would be terrified, because the rage that I sense in this city against the people who are making the decisions that directly impact this situation, that has created it and that perpetuated it, that's where the problem is. We have compassion, right? Everyone, most people do, right? But it's almost like we're talking to the wrong people. The people who are making the decision are not here in this room.
Yeah.
And they're not accountable. How do we get over that? That's what I want to know, because we don't even know what they look like. We don't have their names.
Yeah.
That is a major problem. This could be solved almost overnight with everything that you guys just talked about, if those people would listen.
We
Where do
got
go
our
with that?
leaders fail every year, fail miserably. Look at the numbers. They fail miserably. If this were a private company, a LLC, heads would roll every year. What do we do in San Francisco? Oh, buddy, that's okay. Try to do better next year. And they maintain an office. This cannot continue. And you hit it right on the head. These people are failing miserably. How can you say, oh yeah, we couldn't open the shelters. Now we got 1,000 more, 2,000 more homeless, but we'll try better next year. Okay, good. That's bullshit. Could never happen. We almost need, and I don't even know why I want to say this. We almost need like an Elon Musk to run this, because he would fire everybody. He would fire, the whole city hall would be gone overnight, because he don't take no shit. We almost need someone like him, because right now it's, oh, well, whatever, baby. How was your weekend last weekend?
Yeah.
You know? So we take this thing so cavalier. The people that we entrusted to do what our tax money is paying, take it so, oh, yeah, whatever, la, la, la. And you can't do it like that. You got to be responsible. But there's no consequences. There's no consequences for failing. What kind of company or organization is run like that when you can fail miserably and there's no consequences? That's that LA thing. That's liberalism. Man.
There's a few leaders in this city that want to do the right thing. Okay, I could sit here and name them, but you know, there's a few. They're really trying to do the right thing, but there's something called ideology that's captured the city. Look, we're all liberal. I've been a registered Democrat since 1988. But you can't sit here and tell me that what we're doing right now in San Francisco is progressive. It's not. It's libertarian is what it is. And we're just letting people do whatever the heck they want in the name of body autonomy. I'm sorry, but you know what? That's doing tremendous harm to the community, and we need to really start thinking about guidelines and drawing lines in the sand and saying, you can do this, we will be tolerant to this point. But now that line that used to be there got wiped out. And now it's not clear where the line is anymore. Where is the line? Is there a line? Can you just go, you know, I mean, a couple of years ago, like you had old Asian ladies getting beat up in the middle of the street and dude was getting arrested and getting let out 3 days later on an ankle monitor. What's up? Like, really? 2 people a day are dying of overdose in San Francisco, and we just kind of shrug saying, well, you know, if we had supervised consumption sites, everything would be good. No, it wouldn't be good. It might help in that moment, but you got to do so much more behind that to make it good, and it's just not happening. And I'm really sad to see where San Francisco is right now. I was born here. I'm a native San Franciscan. Okay, I didn't come here. I grew up here, and I was homeless here. But I've also had my family here. My kids were born in San Francisco. I care about the city deeply, and I want to see it change for the better. But it's going to take all of you to get involved. Like that starts with the education. Like I was saying, educate yourself about the homeless crisis as it's specific to San Francisco, and the drug crisis as it's specific to San Francisco, and you'll start to see a lot of intersectionality, and you'll be wowed at the lack of resources that we have out there for folks. So I really commend people like Del, who basically dedicated the remainder of his life to the Tenderloin. I mean, if we could have way more people doing that, that would be, you know, that's the kind of difference that we need to make.
My California license plate, my personalized license plate, doesn't say my girl, doesn't say my dog, doesn't say my kids, says Tenderloin.
Yeah.
And so we covered a lot tonight. So what do we do from here? So at House of Web3, we're going to be getting really active on this issue. Just yesterday, we announced the launch of Geogenesis. And our goal with Geogenesis is to enable communities to come to consensus on knowledge graphs. So knowledge graphs are kind of the most flexible way of representing information. And so things like we discussed today, right, making claims, pointing to specific problems, backing that up with evidence, having proposed solutions, all of these things we can represent as information, and we can represent it in a knowledge graph. And first, we want to start representing people's views and putting that into this knowledge graph. And then we want to, add voting into that so that people can, add their thoughts, their information, their positions into the knowledge graph, and then vote. And together as a community, we can start to come to consensus in organizing this, very, very complex issue. And so that's where we want to start. And then from there, once we have public policy positions that we can agree on as a community, we have that organized, then we can take the next steps. Some of that might be getting politically involved and passing through legislative changes. It could be directing funding. It could be spawning crypto protocols, which give us new ways to organize and create new incentive structures. So we're going to be getting really deep on this issue. We're going to have our first working group session next week. So we'll send out an email after this so people can fill out a survey if you want to join that. And we can start to organize some of these ideas and put it into the graph. So, wow, you guys gave us so much to think about today. Really, thank you so much for the thoughtful conversation. It's really, a testament to the work that you guys have done. Let's give Del and Tom a big round of applause.
I want to thank you wonderful group of people. This is a cold, windy night, and you're out here in a 200-year-old barracks, Army barracks, where you could be having a good meal down on Chestnut and Union Street. And homelessness probably does not actively 24 hours a day affect you. So you do have a dog in the race, but it's a small dog probably, compared to some people in the Tenderloin that are faced with it 24 hours a day. So I thank you. This is what it takes. You asked for the solutions. This is a solution. We all can get on the same page together. We can agree to disagree, but we want to be able to have the opportunity to point out some of the deficiencies that are. The media does a terrible job of making our jobs harder because they give people like you the wrong impressions, wrong information every day because they're selling newspapers. And even in 2022, they're still selling newspapers and come up with some. I look at the story, what the hell are they talking about? I was just on that block yesterday. So you don't always get the accurate information. So try to get it from as many sources and kind of put them together, stir them up, and see what comes out. So thank you so much for being here tonight, everybody. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, so it looks like pizza just arrived, so we're going to be hanging out here for a while. Feel free to grab some food, some drinks, stick around and mingle. We'll be here for a little bit.
Okay. Thank you.